Hello and welcome to episode 184. Now, How to Survive listeners, Chris, are exceptional people. They survive pain, they survive total deprivation. They bear all the sins of the earth, they give themselves up. They transcend themselves. They are transfigured. And that's the motto of this week's film,
Yeah.
Martyrs,
Yeah.
from 2008, directed by
Pascal Laugier.
Pascal Laugier, a name that just rolls off the tongue.
Mm-hmm. If you're French.
Yes. How are you?
I'm not French, but I am well.
Good. Despite not being French.
Yes.
How are you feeling after watching this week's movie?
It's quite an intense one. We don't need to give content warnings for films. It's not our responsibility. It is rated 18, obviously.
Actually, it's not. In France, they appealed against it on censorship laws, and it's only rated 16 there.
There you go. All these traumatized 16-year-olds walking around.
Yeah, everyone's traumatized watching this film.
Yeah, it's a pretty unpleasant watch for reasons that we will get into.
But don't watch it with kids. Don't watch it if you are easily upset by violence against anyone.
Yeah, well, it's torture and self-harm, I would say, are the two main triggers present in this movie.
Yeah, bit suicide as well.
Yep.
It's all in there, mate. What a lovely film.
Yeah, so this week's comedy that we're covering is Martyrs.
Right, so you may have heard about Martyrs, you may know it by reputation. That's
Yeah.
how we knew it before watching it.
It's part of the film movement called New French Extremism.
Great. It's just really piling up reasons to watch this film.
Or New French Extremity, or Extremity.
Yeah, brilliant. So we're going to talk about the movie quite at length.
Mm-hmm.
What we liked and didn't like about it.
Yeah.
And its context in a cultural sense before we talk about how we would survive if we were in Martyrs.
Yeah.
We're going to recap the plot for those who haven't seen it recently or who don't want to watch it. And there probably will be quite a few of those.
Mm-hmm.
I came across a Reddit thread recently which said, what are some of the most upsetting films you've ever seen?
Mm-hmm.
Or like horror movies, I think specifically.
Yeah.
And this was named by a lot of people.
Okay.
So I was kind of interested to watch it on that basis.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what I thought after this.
Elle était enfermée dans une chambre froide. Elle vivait là. Elle n'a pas été violée, c'est une certitude. Lucie ne raconte pas ce qu'elle a vécu.
Pourquoi tu crois qu'on a besoin de toi?
Lucie, vous voulez attraper les gens qui ont fait du mal à Lucie.
C'est ça, Anna.
Elle sait pas qui c'est. Il faisait tout noir. Elle croit qu'elle se souvient, puis des fois non.
Qu'est-ce qu'elle te dit d'autre au juste?
Elle a peur.
Elle te raconte des choses?
Elle dit qu'il faut les attraper.
It wasn't very good. Martyrs. Quick recap, Chris, if you're happy with that.
Yes.
If you can relive it, if you can face it again.
Yeah, please.
Lucy was kidnapped and abused as a child, manacled and chained to a chair with a hole in it so she could relieve herself. She was horrifically tortured but somehow escaped. And the movie is keen to point out, Chris, that she wasn't raped. So don't worry about that.
Great.
At a children's home, she befriends Anna and they become inseparable. 15 years pass and we join a family who are all sitting down to breakfast. Lucy enters and kills them all with the shotgun, including the children. It seems that the parents of the family were responsible for her torture all those years ago. Anna comes to her aid and to help with the cleanup because it was messy business. Lucy is haunted throughout the film by a mangled, rotting woman who attacks her with knives. We realise later on that the woman is a hallucination of a woman who Lucy didn't save when she was escaping from her torturers.
Mm-hmm.
She was also tied to a chair and in a similar state.
She was in a bath, I think, wasn't she?
Yeah, she wasn't doing well.
No.
Anyway, this particular hallucination is the embodiment of Lucy's guilt, and anytime it attacks her, it's actually Lucy self-harming. It ramps up and eventually Lucy kills herself in the house. Hearing a strange noise, Anna goes into the basement of the house where she finds a hospital-like facility.
Mm.
In it, she finds a dark cell in which another mutilated woman has been chained and manacled with various torture devices screwed into her bones. Great stuff.
Yeah, including a big sort of helmet, like mohawk metal implement that's stapled into her head.
Great. Just great. Anna frees her and goes to work removing the shackles, including the one which is pinned into her skull, which means like pulling out a gigantic metal staple from her skull.
Yeah.
Some people arrive with guns and shoot the woman and take Anna hostage.
Yeah, good.
An old lady arrives and explains that the group are an organisation who are trying to recreate the look on the faces of martyrs. She says that when under torture, there's a state where people are not dead, but not truly alive, and it's shown in their eyes, which appear to see something before them. And she has various photos and paintings of martyrs through history.
Yeah, it's supposedly achieving a transcendental state.
Anna is tortured by being force-fed horrible food and being regularly beaten senseless by a large man. This goes on for some time. When she's basically just a human bruise, Anna is skinned alive. The procedure causes the look that they seek to appear on her face, so the old lady is called back, and Anna and the old lady talk about something which we don't hear as the audience. A meeting of the organisation is called to discuss the findings, but the old lady shoots herself before the meeting can begin. Anna lays in a catatonic state, and the movie ends. Laugh a minute stuff. What did you think of Martyrs?
Well, it's a film of two halves. It's almost like two completely different films.
That's quite right.
The first half, it reminded me of like a sort of J-horror.
Yeah.
You have the, I guess, opening escape. Then you have a really strange sort of like found footage
montage. To explain like this is where she was found.
Yeah, because it's like who's filming this and why.
Yeah, exactly. That's the question. Because it shows us a period of time. It's like, why are you shooting them from in the river?
Yeah, it's bizarre. Yeah. So you have this sort of revenge thriller type setup, which opens with like a genuinely harrowing shotgun massacre, which is very down to earth.
It's upsetting, and it
reminded me of Funny Games, the Lars von Trier film. Okay. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't.
Or Elephant, Gus Van Sant's film.
I have seen that.
Just any film that has sort of extremely undramatic gun violence. Not to say it's not dramatic, but I mean it's not dramatized.
It's dramatic based on you don't really know what's happening at this point. You're still kind of not for six by like, are these the right people? Because it seems, I think the movie's setting up that
they're not going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's quite compelling and shocking and dramatic. There's some interesting character stuff at play, like you say. Are they the right family? I don't feel it needed the sort of supernatural horror stuff, which is where the J-horror stuff comes in. You know, like a lank-haired woman who's naked and covered in wounds,
half rotten.
Yeah. I felt like the more it veered towards those sort of horror tropes, the more it let itself down.
I didn't mind the metaphor of that because it was a visualized represent that reveal.
Yeah, the reveal that the woman is a manifestation of the character's trauma.
That kind of works as like a short film.
Yeah,
and at that point when she dies, you're like, okay, that made a lot of sense, and I think that's where the movie loses its way, I think.
Yeah, so the second half is, I think the best way to describe it is that it's an endurance test. And I think that's intentional, but that's not to say that it excuses it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's pretty testing, I would say.
Lucy's arc is the most interesting thing in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Lucy's story, what happened to her, the mystery around it, and her revenge.
Yeah.
And that's done within half an hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's about 40 minutes. It's pretty much evenly split.
Yeah.
I think she goes down into the lab at around the 45-minute mark.
Right. And then the second movie is, my notes say the same thing. It's 2 movies.
Mm.
The second movie is basically just a secondary character being tortured. And you don't really have any investment in them anyway. It's just unpleasant.
I guess, well, you do feel some investment in the form of sympathy and not wanting someone to be tortured.
Of course.
And I guess the fact that she's a young woman goes some way, you know, and the fact that it's often humiliating and I mean, I would say it's shot through with a sort of pornographic tinge to it.
Yeah. I mean, like, a lot of horror movies are meant to be masochistic in as much as you watch it and you feel horror, you feel terror, you feel scared. Do you think this is more sadistic?
Well, I'm not sure that I agree with you that they can be masochistic, because surely film can only ever be, like a horror movie can only ever be sadistic, because it can only ever show you suffering. It can't make you actually experience it, even if you're relating to the characters.
But watching a horror movie that's truly scary, something like Hereditary, is masochistic. You know going into it that you're going to be upset, that you're going to be scared, that you're going to have your nerves shot.
Yeah.
Right? That's the masochistic experience.
I see, yeah. No, that is true. Yeah, in that respect, then there's no there's not really any tension, because there's never really any suggestion that she's going to get out of it.
Exactly. And exactly. They're just going to keep doing this till she's dead, essentially.
Yeah. Or until they achieve their aim.
Goal. So, like I mentioned before, right, this has a certain reputation to it of being an upsetting film, of being an intense film, an extreme film. Do you find it as unpleasant as its reputation would suggest?
Yeah. But I think, the thing that I'd heard about it is the flaying.
Yeah.
Woman is skinned alive thing.
Which happens actually more or less off screen.
It happens off screen. It looks pretty absurd, I think, when
the Robbie Williams rock DJ video.
Yeah, there is definitely an element of that. She's like, it's just like a leotard or whatever, like, like a bodysuit that she's wearing that looks like a sort of cartoon skinless muscle figure.
Exactly, yeah.
Obviously the suggestion of it happening is deeply unpleasant, and the idea of that happening to someone is horrific. Having all their skin surgically removed, but it's almost like it's so much more far-fetched than just a woman being repeatedly beaten.
Yeah,
that's much more harrowing, because
you can imagine, if you got flayed, you'd die before the end of it.
Right,
sure.
Exactly. So there's no way that you'd survive having all your skin cut off. There is a way that you would survive being repeatedly beaten and force-fed every day over the course of several months.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So that's the part that's sort of viscerally unpleasant.
Yeah, I agree with it.
For me, at least.
I've watched more unpleasant films in recent months, I think. Hounds of Love is a movie I've watched about a woman being kidnapped, and the threat of sexual violence hangs over the movie, and it's very uneasy watching. I also watched House That Jack Built, Lars von Trier film about point of view of a serial killer who is decidedly unpleasant, which were both, I think, more upsetting to watch because they weren't so cartoonish, that they had a much more grounded violence and setting, which I think this one does. I mean, House That Jack Built goes a bit crazy at the end, and it's the opposite of that, but the upsetting parts are the ones where it's like, this could genuinely happen to somebody. Yeah. Like, this point you're making with this is like, being flayed isn't a fear that people have.
No.
Being beaten up and, kept prisoner in a basement, I imagine no one wants that.
No, right? Exactly.
It's not as unpleasant as something like Cannibal Holocaust.
No.
Because that had a horrible political economy to its production.
Yeah. I think it's also sort of, it's odd in that obviously I'm sure we're going to get onto this when we're talking about it in relation to being a torture porn movie. But when you compare it to something like Hostel revels in the, like you say, sadistic nature of its violence. Like all of the injury detail and gore detail and the imagination with which the imagination around all of the ways in which people are mutilated or killed or whatever. But that almost functions as a sort of distancing thing in the same way that happens with the Saw movies, in that they become more and more elaborate, and so they get away from the thing that's truly frightening, which is just the most frightening thing is the idea of severe violence being visited upon someone by another person.
Right.
And in this...
like we said when we did the Saw marathon, the first movie is a question. Would you be willing to cut off your own foot to escape?
Yeah.
Or like cut off your own foot or die, essentially.
Yeah.
The seventh movie is, would you be willing to administer alternate shotgun blasts to your colleagues' faces by smashing your own hand with a hammer?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's the more absurd it gets, the more there's like a distance between you and the character.
Correct.
And there's quite a lot of distance between having all of your skin cut off, because any sensible person knows that you wouldn't survive it.
Yeah. Because I was thinking like they must keep her in a incubation chamber to stop her getting infected.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Yeah. Whereas there's very little distance between that and being kept in a cell and force-fed and beaten for no reason.
That's true. It's the realism, isn't it, at the end of the day? Like, Hereditary was a much more unpleasant experience to watch. I remember coming out of that feeling like I've been electrocuted. But that's because it doesn't verge into the full pantomime of something like this. And I think having the old lady in this, Mademoiselle, whatever, that's cringy, I think. And all the stuff that she says is completely like, oh, God, get on with it. Get on with the movie. This is so shit. That's how I felt. And that took me out of the film. And it made everything subsequent just get on with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, like you mentioned earlier, this is kind of our first foray into what might be called torture porn. We've strayed away from it because there's not, to like something like Hostel or Saw, although we've done Saw, there's a certain element of unsurvivability.
Yeah.
So there's no point in us covering it. This is a little bit different. There is some meat on those bones, and ostensibly the movie has a brain. But do you think it does?
Well, it's considered part of this wave of new French extremity films, which also includes the likes of Raw, which we covered last year.
That was great.
And Revenge, which is the film that we're covering next week, which I haven't seen yet, but I've heard very good things about. It's also, the movement also includes the films of, for example, Gaspar Noé with Irreversible. Oliver Assayas and Alexandra Aya, who went on to direct the remake of The Hills Have Eyes.
Okay.
And they tend to be characterised by their transgressive and often violent nature. According to writer Tim Palmer, they take a severe approach to depicting violence and sex, which I'm sure you would agree applies to this film.
Yes.
You could also expand it to a sort of more European sensibility, include the likes of Lars von Trier, who you talked about a minute ago, and Fatih Akin, which some people call the new extremism in cinema. It's obviously influenced by torture porn, horror, this film in particular, I mean, and Logier claims Hostel is an influence. And he says, my film is very clear about what it says about human pain and human suffering. The film is only really about the nature and the meaning of human suffering. I mean, the pain we all feel on an everyday basis in a symbolic way. The film doesn't talk about torture, it talks about the pain, which is him trying to, I think, distance himself from Hostel. But I don't believe that there's as much of a disparity as he would like to believe.
No.
Jamie Graham from Total Film said Martyrs was like a torture porn movie for Guardian readers.
Yeah, I believe that.
which is a very good way of summing it up, I
Yes,
think.
it is. But it's more palatable because there's, at the heart of it, some wanky message.
Yeah. It debuted in Cannes in 2008, and there were reports in various places of audience members walking out, fainting, vomiting, bursting into tears, all that sort of thing, which you normally get with
A horror movie again.
PR thing.
It's considered to be the most divisive movie it can, isn't it?
Yeah, although I've seen Lars von Trier's The Idiots, which is the one that Mark Kermode famously got thrown out of a screening of at Cannes because he stood up and started shouting, "This is shit," over and over again until they kicked him out of the cinema.
Really?
Which, considering Mark Kermode's views on causing disruption in the cinema, is quite something. But
Really? That's not true.
yeah, the Idiots is a truly abhorrent piece of work. I think it's very hard to argue that Martyrs doesn't have more of a brain when you compare it to something like Hostel or Saw.
Hostel 3.
It's like notionally loftier aims.
So what is the message of the film?
Well, I mean, in terms of the message, it's about pain, mate. It's about human pain.
When you're listening.
Yeah, I mean, it's intentionally repulsive, isn't it? And difficult to watch.
So do you think there is that level of like masochism in it then? Is he trying to be sadistic to the audience as well as the characters?
Well, I think it depends what you... Because it's torture porn shot through the lens of an art house French movie. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
But it's still torture porn, right? And the sort of 20 minutes that the film spends on just showing repeated beatings and force feedings, which, and like I'm sure some people would disagree with me, but you will never convince me otherwise. They are sexualized completely, right? To an unpleasant and needless degree, which completely goes into, the porn aspect of torture porn, right? Adam Smith on the New Extremity movies says that they all focus on the body, right? And the French, in this case, seem intent to prove that it is not our corporeal existence that should be held sacred. Their insistence on showing anything and everything is evidence of this. The body is meant to be examined explicitly and externally to deepen our understanding of our own humanity and what we hope lies in wait for us all at the end. And Linda Williams, who is another film writer, says that body horror is like pornography in that they're both genres of excess and they're spectacle driven. And so they elicit responses in audiences by showing bodies in intense physical or emotional sensation. And that's why torture porn is considered pornographic, is because it's,
extreme and sensualized.
Yeah, it's showing... It's focused on physical. There's no psychological torture porn movie, is there? Right. It's all about the body. It's about the physicality of what is happening to a body, which is the same as you don't get psychological porn movies, right? Right.
No, that would be something.
Yeah, that's the fact.
How would that work?
Well, I guess you get like ASMR stuff. I guess.
What's that?
Like ASMR videos are those ones that people record where it's like, they whisper into the thing and it's like auto-sensory something response.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Have you never heard of this, really?
No.
So it's like a whole genre of, I think they're videos generally, and people like record themselves and they go like, someone might be like, oh, I'm going to open a can of drink, and they'll like hold the drink up to the microphone and they'll be like, and like opening the drink, and it's like there's a auto
what's the point?
Right. So I think for some people they have this like intense reaction to the sensation of someone like whispering in their ear,
right?
And it's like an auto sensory response which is elicited by these things, and people do like, I think. So imagine something that's like really tactile and makes a sound like bubble wrap or whatever.
Okay.
They might like pop bubble wrap in a microphone, but it's like really like everything else in the room is silent and you're just hearing the bubble wrap and this like pretty girl whispering and stuff. And I think I genuinely do not know anything really about ASMR videos aside from like in general how they're made or like what they're, you know, in general what their format is. But I think some people get like some sort of
thrill out of it.
Yeah.
Sexual thrill.
I'd imagine,
is it sexual or is it just like satisfying?
I'd imagine for some people it's sexual, yeah. But
because there's videos like satisfying videos you need to see or whatever.
Right. So I guess it would be like some people like watching spots being popped or whatever, right?
Nauseating.
Yeah, exactly, right. But for some people it's like satisfying. It gives them a certain like physical response. Anyway, right. With torture porn. It wouldn't exist without the intense focus. Like similarly, you can't have like a 12 rated torture porn movie,
right?
Because the sensation of watching the movie is so tied into what is happening to the bodies of the people on screen.
That's true.
And so in that regard, it's exactly like pornography.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So it's two sides of a similar coin.
Yeah, and like. It can aim high with its, you know, you could write a porn movie with like a fucking great story, but if you've still got 25 minutes of some girl getting railed, then it's going to be a porn movie. No one's going to watch it in a cinema. Right?
Just like if you have high pretensions of your wanky French philosophy, but then you show a woman just being beaten and then skinned.
Yeah.
It's still torture porn.
It's still torture porn, isn't it? It's like it's like you're gatekeeping the philosophy in your movie. It's like you're saying you have to earn the right to
enjoy
to get something out of the philosophy of my movie or something. It's we don't watch torture porn movies because generally they're viscerally unpleasant, even as people who watch, you know, at least one horror movie every week.
Yeah.
But then, you know, like we are desensitized, I think, to horror movies, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet torture porn movies elicit a response in us, and that's because it's by design, isn't it? That's what they're intended to do.
Yeah. It takes a lot to scare me in a movie, but it doesn't take much to make me go, ugh.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I was thinking about what I think the message of the film is. I think you made some very good points there about torture porn. Fair play. Well researched.
Yeah. Well, I think the message is about the afterlife, right? Or
so what I think is it's about nihilism, right? It's a nihilistic movie.
Absolutely.
At a push, you could say its main message is that nothing matters and we're all going to die anyway. It doesn't matter if you die by torture, by shotgun blast to the chest, or you shoot yourself in the head, or you're a mouse that gets found in a pipe at the beginning of the film. The outcome is the same, right? And knowing what comes after that doesn't change anything. Mm-hmm. You're still going to die. So why bother?
Yeah.
All right. But, I mean, that little analysis took a lot of thinking to get to that point. And I don't think it's a particularly good analogy or an allegory for anything. It's just very thin philosophy that lives in service to the real point of the film, which, as you've said, is just to skin a woman alive, right? Pascal Laugier has said that the hardest part of filming it was keeping the women crying all the time, which I think it tells you everything you need to. It wasn't like, oh, we had to think about how we were going to convey this sense of nihilism or this sense of, like, you know, the human experience.
Yeah.
It's how do we make the actresses cry in our horror movie. Perhaps a clearer point that they could have made would have been if the outcome of their little game, their torture, was more useful, right? If one person's suffering perhaps held the key to everyone's suffering ending, and there becomes a moral question at the heart of it, which is like, would you
torture someone to
save everyone else?
Yeah,
right. But as it stands, because it's just people who want to know something which they're going to find out anyway, we're all going to find it out eventually. It's a fairly pointless exercise, I think.
Yeah, it's completely pointless.
The movie at the end of it is like annoying in how much it tries to be dramatic and philosophical, but the fact that that's delivered by one of the strangest looking people. She looks like you could call her a Doctor Who character.
Right.
It's like her in human form.
Mother Suspiria.
Mother Suspiria in human form, basically. This like old lady with like...
Yeah, she's just credited as Mademoiselle.
Mademoiselle is the worst villain ever. Because she's like... just rubbish.
Yeah. I mean, we can start How to Survive now, really, because this relates exactly to one of my points.
Go on then.
The cult's aim, as you said, is to torture people so that they may enter a state of transcendental martyrdom, right? And see what the afterlife is like. They achieve this aim, and then the woman, Mademoiselle, learns what the afterlife is like and then commits suicide, right? Regardless of whatever the afterlife is, their work is pointless, because if it's like a Christian style theocratic afterlife, right? They won't be granted entry because they've dedicated their lives to torturing individuals, and they'll instead be sent to hell where they will be tortured for eternity.
Yeah, is it if it's Christian?
Yeah, if it's Christian, yeah. If everyone is allowed into the afterlife, if there's just one afterlife, like heaven, and people are allowed in regardless of their actions, then their work has been futile and pointless, because why, if you've got one life to live and it doesn't matter what you do, before you get into the afterlife, why would you spend it torturing people for no reason?
Yeah.
Right? For a false aim, I guess. And if there's no afterlife at all, it's exactly the same point, because they've wasted their lives torturing people for no reason. Therefore, the best advice to them is to just be a good person and make the most of your life on Earth, rather than committing your life to torturing innocent people.
So regardless of the outcome of this experiment, just be nice.
Yeah. Well, don't do the experiment in the first place, because if you follow it to its logical conclusion, right, if you're trying to discover whether or not heaven exists, which I assume, I mean, I'm making an assumption about their religion and also whether or not they are religious. I would imagine that they are, because they believe in an afterlife. They're all Western Caucasian individuals. So it's a fairly safe assumption, I would say, that they're Christian. They hold some sort of demented Christian value, right? In which case, if you follow that to its logical conclusion, you should know that you're not going to gain access to heaven, because you've spent your lives torturing and flaying people alive.
Right, yeah. It's not one of the 10 Commandments, but it's not good.
It's not good. It's frowned upon, I would imagine. Right? So let's say the thing that the girl whispers is, oh yeah, there's heaven and hell. Then she'll be like, oh, I mean, good, because I've had my beliefs confirmed, but also I've spent 30 years torturing people
get
to
down
death.
to the church for confession.
Yeah, well, but she takes the bullet to the head route. So maybe the fact is that I mean, if you're so what is it she says before she shoots herself? She says, "Don't stop doubting," right?
Something
or
like
keep
that.
Doubting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because she says to the guy on the other side of the door, like, what do you think there is?
Yeah.
And he says, oh, I don't know. And he says, keep doubting. And then blows her head off.
Right, because what she found out was obviously troublesome.
Yeah, either. Well, but then is she not trying to hasten her entry to the afterlife?
I mean. This leads into my first point. Right?
Yeah.
Which is that if you've just found... it looks like she's in some distress. She's despondent. She's down on it.
Yeah.
And she's like, well...
fuck it.
Yeah. It's like a character in another movie doing a similar thing would be like, they've just realised that their life's work has failed. And they're like, oh, fuck. I'm really pissed off now. Or like the enemy's at the door. Let's just get it over with now. Right? Because there's only one thing.
Yeah.
Right? So she's just found out whatever she's found out. It sounds like the afterlife's shit from what her expression is.
Yeah.
And why are you rushing to get there?
Yeah.
She's like, it's like, oh, the afterlife's really shit. And she goes upstairs, she's sat on the edge of the bath like, oh, fuck me. The guy's like, what is it? And she's like, just don't even fucking worry about it, mate. It's just rubbish. Well, then shoots herself in the head and goes to the afterlife.
Given the nihilistic tone of the rest of the film, as you've discussed, do you think that the interpretation that we should have of this is that there is nothing?
Yeah, I think so. Nothing or...
There is no afterlife.
Yeah, in which case, why bother? Why shoot yourself in the head? Because
everything is pointless.
everything is suffering.
Everything's pointless. There is no reason for her to do anything. Not only is there no reason for her to have spent her life torturing people, there's no reason for anyone to do anything at any point because there is no life after death.
But it's a very permanent solution to that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a nihilistic film, isn't it? Nihilism is that everything is pointless and futile.
Nothing matters.
Nothing matters. So why carry on? What is life without any meaning? Why not kill yourself?
Don't kill yourself if you are listening to this and you're feeling like it's a depressing film.
Absolutely. But maybe that explains why she did it.
Maybe.
She's a fucking lunatic, isn't she?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
why we even want her to survive?
Yeah, because for one thing, right? If she was like heaven's amazing, I can't wait to get there.
Yeah.
And then she's like, great, runs upstairs and shoots herself in the head. You'd understand it better.
Yeah.
Or if it's like, what's the point? Then you may as well keep going.
She seems deflated rather than like...
Yeah, like overjoyed.
Yeah.
I've got a bit of that was a bit down, that one. I've got one to cheer us up.
Okay.
If you're monitoring people's eyes, don't staple a metal eye blocker over their eyes.
Yeah.
Because then you won't be able to monitor their eyes.
That is very true. The woman who's got like a thing stapled across her head.
The outcome variable they're measuring is eye expression.
Yeah, every time they go in, they're like, eyes, yes, no.
Yeah.
If yes, phone Mademoiselle. If no, carry on torture.
Yeah. This woman's eyes are blocked by a metal helmet.
Yeah.
So how would she could be in like a perpetual state of having
entering the rapture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll never know because she had a Roman helmet stapled over her head.
That is very true. Makes no sense. She's got like this. Who's that guy in Star Trek who's got like a visor?
I know the guy you mean.
Yeah, like a. I'm sure everyone at home knows as well.
Yeah, shout it out.
It's a bit like that, Yeah, that's a very good point. Do you think they're constantly like crowbarring the thing off her head to check? Like they feed her slop for the day, and then go. Right, just have a look at her eyes, get the screwdriver, like pry it off her skull, and then go, no, still
get the hammer, get back on.
Fucking hell. It's grim, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got another tip is for for Anna, in fact, the character, and it relates to the same poor soul who's had a thing stapled to her head. Which is
Does she have a name?
I don't remember. I don't think we know. Yeah, Staplehead. Fine. So what? Just get a medical professional to remove the staples from Staplehead. Yeah. In fact, why would you stay there at all?
As soon as you find that, you've got proof that anything you did was justified.
Yeah. You could argue she's barely committed a crime anyway. Yeah. Because
she just went down there to find.
She went round there to find her friend. Yeah. Who that's a reasonable thing to do. Her friend is in some distress. And then you could say that once she's there, she's essentially being coerced into helping her by the threat of violence.
Yeah, true.
Right? And her friend is a mentally unstable serial killer. So the threat of violence is very much there. Then she kills herself and then you find the imprisoned woman, right? It's very clear that it's a pretty organised situation. So it's not a great leap of imagination, I don't think, to suggest that other people might turn up.
Yeah, right.
Which they do. It's like a, very generic, lots of people wearing black turn up and shoot someone in the head straight away. Yeah, brilliant. How many films have we seen that in?
Every film ever?
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's just as soon as you find the woman, fine, get her out of the manacles and take her upstairs, but then just get in your fucking car and get out there. Don't sit her in the bath and try and take the staples out yourself.
Would you want to be driving with her in the passenger seat?
What you want to? Would you rather stay in the house?
No.
Pop her in the bath and then go out.
Leave her.
Yeah, fucking why not, mate? She's not long for this world, regardless, is she?
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
She's not going to bounce back from that.
No, she's not going to thrive after that. Not going to rally.
Fair enough. I think I can't argue with you. Seek medical help for the medical patient.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got one final suggestion from me,
Go on.
which is a sort of methodology based one for the cult.
Okay.
Don't make the surgeon administer the beatings, as his hands are presumably very valuable.
I don't think they're much damage on his hands, though, are they? The beatings.
Yeah, like what if you're repeatedly beating someone senseless with your bare hands every day for weeks?
But the size difference is considerable.
What
It'd
size
be like,
it's
it'd be like
it's
you
just-
beating up a
no,
cat.
No, it's not like that, because cats have different bone density to humans.
Yeah.
If you're punching someone's skull every day for weeks, to the point where she's just like a balloon from all the swelling, that's got to do something to your hands. And if you're a surgeon, then you that's your stock and trade, Joe.
I liked that the when she was skinned, like all her bruises just disappeared,
Yeah,
including the ones all over her face, which is left intact.
that's true. Yeah, do you think his body's just like, oh fucking hell, we've got too much on, too much going on here?
All the
But
bruises back in.
It seems a bit insensible to do that, to make the surgeon do that, because he could use tools. He could use a bat if he wanted to.
I don't think it's
Or I mean, you could
not
swap.
a high tax on him to just swing a few punches.
Yeah, but you could also just swap the roles around. So the woman beats her up, and he
But who's gonna feed
administers. Yeah, but he administers the feedings.
Yeah, but I think it would be a higher tax on the woman. Listen, I
but
don't know
the
if I
woman
mentioned
doesn't-
this, Chris, but I'm a bit of a combat specialist, and
Whoever's playing How to Survive Bingo,
yeah,
down your drinks now.
punching someone in the head isn't that bad.
Okay, fine. Well, I'd
Happy
bow
to
to your
demonstrate.
superior knowledge, but I would also say that if there are any surgeons listening, I'd like to know if any of them also box, because I'd imagine that they probably don't.
At least not with gloves on. At least not without gloves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, maybe wear gloves, boxing gloves.
Yeah,
That'll do the job. Protect your hands well enough.
yeah, exactly. There you go. Wear boxing gloves.
Or
and
kick her, just kick her.
Wear boxing gloves so that you may more efficiently torture a woman that you keep in the basement.
Well, that's the one thing you take away from today's episode. Let it be clear. Chris Morris, clear advice there. Now, you agree that this was an experiment that was carried out?
Yeah, I guess so.
The organization's experiment was essentially a hypothesis. We believe that torturing people will elicit a transcendental state
Yeah.
where they may be then interrogated to find out what happens in the afterlife.
Yeah.
My wife, as we've said previously in the podcast, is a doctor of psychology. She runs experiments. She's taught experimental methods.
Yeah,
I interviewed her during the Belko experiment about that particular experiment.
that's right. Yeah.
I ran this particular experiment past her for Martyrs
Okay.
to get her thoughts. She said ethics is an issue.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Lack of informed consent or right to withdraw. A definite risk of harm to the participant.
Yeah.
If they took videos or photos or audio, how do they protect the anonymity of participants? I don't believe they did. But
Maybe that's what the metal helmet thing.
right, it could be it.
It's
Yeah.
for.
It's an anonymizing tool. How young are the girls? If under 16, you need parental consent.
Okay, yeah, I think it's unlikely that they would get it.
I imagine there was some deception involved in the kidnapping, though possibly they can argue that the deception is a necessary part of the methods and that participants were fully debriefed. Now, she was debriefed.
She was debriefed, yeah.
Yeah, so fair enough. Next point was about the experiment itself. She says the experiment design itself seems pretty solid. Did they transcribe verbatim? What kind of qualitative analysis did they use on the interview data? This is where I worry that methods might have fallen apart.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge the lack of realism, though, as the person doesn't actually die, so the experience could differ. How controlled is the environment? Are they trying different methods of torture or different victims? And looking at whether the responses differ. That might be an interesting direction for further research. Did they only get a response from one participant before ending the study? You pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, what's to suggest that she's not just gone insane? It's just saying anything.
That's the key, right?
Right.
Anyway, I would argue that they didn't reach data saturation. And the final point is on data itself. What data are they keeping? Are they audio recording the interviews and transcribing them? Apparently you need to keep anonymized data for 10 years in case of an audit. But that might just be the NHS, and I don't think they're recruiting through the NHS.
It doesn't seem like it.
They wouldn't be able to get their findings published because you have to state that you met ethical requirements for using human participants, e.g. have been reviewed by an ethics committee, informed consent, lack of participant harm, and right to withdraw, none of which are present here. So
it's a mess.
It's a mess. Yeah, you could. This would be. No one's going to publish this. And what I noticed as well is that there's only two people who know the findings of the experiment: Anna and Mademoiselle.
Yeah,
both dead at the end.
Yes. Well, Anna's not. Is she dead? She's on her way. She's
dead to the world. She's not going to be a useful research assistant at that point.
No.
So there you go.
Well, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe in Martyrs 2, they do it in a sort of more controlled environment.
Yeah. Apparently the remake is more pseudoscientific, so
I can imagine.
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
So that was Martyrs. We're martyrs for sitting through it, really.
Yeah. Next week is the second in our, I guess, revenge / new French extremity season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's last year's Revenge.
Yep.
Which I haven't seen, but sounds very interesting.
It does. It's best served cold, though.
Well done, mate. That's good. No, that is good. Well done. Yeah. If you'd like to email the show, HowToSurviveShow@gmail.com is the email address. Have we had any emails, Joe?
Yeah, a couple, Chris. First one here comes from Chris, who emailed in a few weeks ago. He's the one who wrote "What's up, Buttercups" at the beginning of the email.
So he's emailed in again.
He has. The subject line is "How to survive reading emails written by the town drunk."
Okay.
Whilst it's true I wrote my previous email drunk, which explains calling you Buttercups, the films are genuinely real and pretty shit. He recommended Fortress 2, and Damnation Alley, if you remember.
Right.
The Fortress films are about futuristic super prisons where the protagonist improbably escapes with an explosive device embedded in his intestines in the first film. And Damnation Alley is a post-apocalyptic load of nonsense based on a book that probably didn't make sense when it was written, with the effects of Journey to the Centre of the Earth if they didn't have the creativity to match. My mate and I love your podcast, by the way. She listened to the entirety of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 just to insult the email I apparently wrote by throwing darts at a board with random phrases on it. Thanks, Amanda. Thank you, Amanda, for listening just for that.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris, for your email.
Yeah. Chris says that he would leave us a 5-star review if he could, but his app won't let him, which the only answer is get a new app. Another email here from Thomas, who says, "Hello, I'm a new listener and I'm having a blast. Keep up the great work." Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks.
Do you take suggestions? We certainly do. If so, please take a look. And Thomas has recommended 8 films.
Yeah, you've sent me this email already.
Yeah.
They're not films.
Number 1, Doctor Who, 1963 to 1989, 1996, and or 2005 onwards.
I mean, that is quite
40 years of Doctor Who.
That is quite a
request.
Quite a request.
You were a fan of Doctor Who, weren't you?
No.
Used to be?
Not really.
I've seen the posters, mate.
That's true.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Pokemon. Series or the first movie. Number 3. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Series or the movie.
Yeah.
Movie's got Bryan Cranston. Do you mean the Bryan Cranston
no,
movie?
I presume he means
90s
Mighty
movies.
Morphin Power Rangers, right?
Maybe. Number 4, Dracula, 1931.
Okay. Better.
Number 5, Frankenstein,
That is more
1931.
like it. Yeah. Now we're getting somewhere.
Number 6, The Blair Witch Project.
Yeah. Okay. Not bad.
Kind of done it. Kind of done it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 7, Buffy the
You
Vampire
done it
Slayer
again.
series.
Ruined it again. You're doing so well. You did a few. That was
Yeah.
fine. Look,
Number 8, final one. X-Files, series or movies.
right. I'm sure you'd agree with me, Joe, that doing this podcast takes up what is sometimes an egregious amount of your spare time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just watching essentially a 2-hour movie a week,
Yeah.
writing notes for a couple of hours, recording the podcast for a couple of hours, editing a podcast for a couple of hours, okay?
Mhm.
It's maybe like it could...
It's a day's work a week
Yeah, there you go.
and a bit more.
Yeah, and it varies more or less because we take turns editing them.
Unpaid work.
Unpaid, yeah. Now, I haven't looked, but I would wager that Buffy, for example, how many series was that? 7, I think.
7 series.
7 series, 24 episodes a series, I'd imagine. It was back in those days. 40 minutes per episode. Now, that's probably about a week of watch time just on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
And we're not going to condense that into 45 minutes of a podcast.
no.
X-Files is 11 series plus movies.
Good. I dread to think what like Pokemon is. I can imagine that's just gone on for
Yeah.
about 25 series.
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
They
That
don't
is
stop making that.
60 years of
Yeah.
of television.
Started in
do you know what?
1963.
Do you know what? If you don't ask, you don't get, and I respect it.
Yeah.
But we're much more likely to do Dracula or Frankenstein.
Yeah. Good pairing as well. Original Universal monsters from 1931.
Yeah,
I'm down with it.
down with it.
I
Yeah,
can do it.
yeah. It's just a shame that
Listen,
it was
Thomas, I'm going to add Dracula and Frankenstein to the list. Go back and listen to our episode on Blair Witch, and you'll get our thoughts on Blair Witch Project.
Yeah,
But I'm going to put a pin in this for now.
yeah,
Doctor Who, Pokemon, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and X-Files.
yeah.
We may revisit in the future if we find ourselves with upwards of like 500 hours.
Yeah,
of
if we're
spare
both
time.
unemployed, post Brexit, then maybe we'll do it.
Yeah.
Because why not?
We did talk about doing another podcast about the TV series Lost, and we were going to call it "We Have to Go Back."
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it's already been done.
yeah, with the exact title, which to be fair, I sort of expected, but it is nonetheless a shame. Maybe we could just call it "How to Survive Presents We Need to Go Back," a Lost recap.
Maybe.
If you'd like to see that,
that's 40 minutes a week. Just
Yeah.
watch that.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't do a fucking episode per podcast,
episode.
surely.
We have to, don't we?
No,
We have to go back.
we have to go back. If you'd like to see, we have to go back.
If you want to see two men who talk about horror movies, talk about a
An increasingly forgotten TV series
from like 15 years
15 years ago, then please get in touch. HowToSurviveShow@gmail.com. You can also tweet your support for We Need to Go Back at HowToSurvivePod. Thank you.
Yeah. If you've got any 5-star reviews you want to send our way,
Yeah.
the place to do it. This goes for Chris as well, who he didn't know what app to use.
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts is
Apple
the place to do
Podcasts
it.
is the arbiter really of podcast ratings.
Yeah, so leave us a 5-star review on there. If you don't have Apple Podcasts, get it. On any system, you can just download iTunes, set up an account, and leave us a 5-star review. I don't know why it's so hard for you people. I know for a fact there's more people listening than leave reviews. So, if you're listening now and you haven't left us a review, you're a liar, right? You're lying to me. Otherwise, if you have left us a review, then you're in our Hall of Fame, and thank you very much. Next week, as Chris mentioned, is Revenge. We'll see you then. And in the meantime,
Be doubtful.